The Velkari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. No one remembered a time before their rule. No one dared to imagine a time after it. Emperor Zaltharis IX sat upon the obsidian throne, a seat carved from the heart of a dead star. His pale, iridescent skin glowed softly in the dim light of the throne room. His four eyes, each a deep purple, stared out at the holographic map of his domain. 800 star systems, 40 enslaved species, trillions of souls living and dying at his command. The Velkari were tall and graceful beings. Their bodies were thin and elegant, built for comfort rather than struggle. Their homeworld had been kind to them, gentle seasons, abundant food, no predators. Evolution had shaped them into creatures of the mind rather than the body. They were brilliant. They were ancient. And they believed, with absolute certainty, that they were the rightful masters of all life in the universe. This belief had served them well. When they first developed faster-than-light travel, they spread across the stars like a slow plague. Every species they encountered was given a simple choice: kneel or die. Most chose to kneel. Those who did not were erased from existence, their worlds turned to ash, their names forgotten. The Velkari called this the Great Order. They saw themselves as bringing civilization to the chaos of the cosmos. The enslaved species saw it differently, but their opinions did not matter. They worked in mines and factories. They built ships and weapons. They lived and died serving their masters, and they had no hope of anything else. On this particular day, Emperor Zaltharis IX was bored. The empire ran itself. There had been no real challenge to Velkari power in over 3,000 years. The last species to resist, the Drethkai, had been completely destroyed. Their planet was now a memorial to Velkari might, a dead rock orbiting a dying sun, visited by tourists who wanted to see what happened to those who defied the empire. A soft chime interrupted the emperor's thoughts. He waved one long-fingered hand, and a hologram appeared before him. It showed the face of High Scholar Velneth, the chief xenobiologist of the Imperial Academy. "Your Eternal Majesty," Velneth said, bowing deeply, "I bring news of a discovery." The emperor did not move. "Speak." "Our long-range listening posts in the outer spiral arm have detected organized radio signals. They appear to be coming from a small planet in an uncharted system. The signals show clear signs of intelligence." The emperor's four eyes blinked slowly. A new species. It had been centuries since they had found one worth mentioning. "Tell me about this world." Velneth's hologram was replaced by an image of a blue and green planet covered in swirling white clouds. "The natives call it Earth, Majesty. It orbits a yellow star they call Sol. Based on their radio transmissions, they appear to be at a relatively early stage of technological development. Chemical rockets, basic nuclear power, primitive computing systems." "Primitive," the emperor repeated. The word tasted good. "Yes, Majesty. However, there are some unusual aspects to this species." Velneth hesitated. "The planet itself is concerning." "Concerning how?" "It is what we classify as a high-danger world, Majesty. Extreme temperature variations, constant seismic activity, a turbulent atmosphere that produces violent storms. The planet is also home to millions of species, many of them predatory. Disease is common. The natives call their world beautiful, but by our standards, it is a death trap." The emperor considered this. "And yet life evolved there. Intelligent life." "Yes, Majesty. The natives call themselves humans. They are carbon-based, bipedal, and appear to be highly adaptable. They have spread across their entire planet, surviving in almost every environment it offers." "Interesting." The emperor leaned forward slightly. "But still primitive. Still weak." "Of course, Majesty. Their most powerful weapons could not scratch the hull of one of our transport ships. They would pose no military threat whatsoever." The emperor smiled. It was not a kind expression. "Then we shall welcome them into the empire. Dispatch High Admiral Kethvaran with an expeditionary fleet. Standard first contact protocol." Velneth bowed again. "It shall be done, Majesty." The hologram faded and the emperor returned his gaze to the map of his empire. Soon it would have one more dot of light, one more world kneeling before the obsidian throne, One more species learning its proper place in the Great Order. He did not give the matter much more thought. Why would he? The humans were primitive. They came from a dangerous world, yes, but that only meant they would be desperate for the safety and stability the Empire could offer. They would kneel like all the others. They would serve like all the others. And in a few generations, they would forget they had ever been free. High Admiral Keth Varan received his orders with satisfaction. He was old, even by Velkari standards, and he had conquered more worlds than he could easily count. First contact missions were simple affairs. Arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate the power of the Empire, accept the surrender of the terrified natives, return home to medals and praise. He assembled his fleet, 12 warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. It was more than enough. It was always more than enough. As his flagship, the Divine Certainty, prepared to enter hyperspace, Keth Voran reviewed the intelligence reports on the humans. Primitive, aggressive, short-lived. They fought wars among themselves constantly. They had weapons capable of destroying their own cities, and they had actually used them. The Admiral found this amusing. A species that could not even achieve peace on its own world thought it could stand against the Velkari Empire. The thought was laughable. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving trails of light behind them. 12 ships carrying the might of an empire that had never known defeat. 12 ships that would bring another world to its knees. Keth Voran settled into his command chair and closed his eyes. The journey would take several days. When he arrived, he would do what he had always done. He would crush any resistance. He would accept the surrender. He would add another world to the map. He had done it 100 times before. He did not know that this time would be different. He did not know that the humans had been listening to Velkari communications for 200 years. He did not know that they had been preparing. He did not know that everything was about to change. But he would learn. They would all learn. The Divine Certainty emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, followed by the 11 other warships of the Expeditionary Fleet. High Admiral Keth Voran opened his 4 eyes and looked at the view screen. The yellow star burned in the distance, surrounded by a collection of planets. "Report," he commanded. His second officer, a younger Velkari named Shalven, studied the sensor readings. "We have arrived successfully, Admiral. I am detecting the 3rd planet now. It matches the description from our intelligence reports. Large amounts of water, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, significant electromagnetic activity consistent with a technological civilization." Keth Voran nodded slowly. "Any sign that they have detected us?" "Unknown, Admiral. Their sensor technology should not be capable of detecting our ships at this range, but—" Shalven paused, her expression troubled. "But what?" "I am detecting some unusual readings, Admiral. There appear to be many more artificial structures in orbit around the 3rd planet than our intelligence suggested, and some of them are quite large." The Admiral waved his hand dismissively. "Space stations, communication satellites, the usual primitive infrastructure. It does not matter. Bring us closer. Standard approach formation." The fleet moved inward, 12 ships flying in perfect formation. As they drew closer to Earth, the sensor readings became clearer and more troubling. "Admiral," Shalven said, her voice now carrying a note of concern, "I am detecting over 3,000 orbital structures around the planet. Many of them appear to be heavily armed, and there are ships, many ships, far more than our intelligence indicated." For the first time, Keth Voran felt a small flicker of unease, but he pushed it aside. Numbers meant nothing against superior technology. 1,000 primitive ships were still primitive ships. "Continue the approach," he ordered, "and prepare the standard greeting transmission." The fleet came to a stop at a comfortable distance from Earth. Keth Voran stood before the communication array and composed himself. He had given this speech many times before. "Attention, inhabitants of the 3rd planet. I am High Admiral Keth Voran of the Velkari Empire. Your world has been chosen for incorporation into the Great Order. You will submit to Imperial authority. You will provide workers and resources as required. In exchange, you will receive the protection and guidance of the Empire. Resistance is not recommended. Respond immediately." He ended the transmission and waited. Usually there was a period of confused silence, followed by panicked communications among the natives, followed by a terrified response from whatever leader they had. The process was predictable, but this time the response came immediately. A human face appeared on the view screen. It was a female, middle-aged by their standards, with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. Admiral Keth Voran, I am Fleet Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Confederacy. We received your transmission. We understand your demands, and we decline. Keth Voran blinked. In all his years, no one had ever simply declined. You do not understand your situation. My fleet carries enough firepower to reduce your entire planet to ash. Submission is your only option. Admiral Chen Wei did not react. Her expression remained unchanged. We understand our situation perfectly. We have been monitoring Velkari communications for approximately 200 of our years. We know exactly what your empire does to the species it conquers. We know about the slave camps. We know about the forced breeding programs. We know about the Drethkai. At the mention of that name, Keth Voran stiffened. The Drethkai were rebels. They were dealt with appropriately. You exterminated an entire species because they wanted to be free. Chen Wei's voice did not rise, but something dangerous moved behind her eyes. We have seen the records. We know what you are, and we will not kneel. Then you will die. No, Admiral, we will not. Keth Voran cut the communication with an angry gesture. Target the largest orbital structure. Fire the primary weapon. The Divine Certainty's main cannon powered up. It was a magnificent weapon, capable of delivering enough energy to crack a planet's crust. One shot would destroy whatever primitive space station the humans had built. It would show them the price of defiance. The cannon fired. A beam of brilliant white energy crossed the void, striking a large ship that had moved into position between the fleet and Earth. The beam hit the ship's shields and stopped. What? Keth Voran moved toward the view screen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The human ship was completely unharmed. Its shields had absorbed the full power of his primary weapon as if it were nothing. Admiral, Shalvin said, her voice now shaking, that ship, it is not a space station. It is a warship, and it is powering weapons. The human ship fired. Keth Voran did not even have time to give an order. A single shot from the human vessel struck the Divine Certainty amidships. The shields, which had protected the ship through 100 battles, failed instantly. The hull, which had been built to withstand any known weapon, tore apart like paper. In 11 seconds, the flagship of the Velkari Expeditionary Fleet ceased to exist. High Admiral Keth Voran, Conqueror of Worlds, was dead before he could understand what had happened. The remaining 11 ships tried to fight. They tried to flee. It did not matter. The human fleet moved with speed and precision that should have been impossible. Their weapons fired again and again, each shot finding its target, each shot destroying a Velkari warship instantly. In 3 minutes, it was over. 12 ships reduced to expanding clouds of debris, thousands of Velkari dead, and not a single human ship had suffered so much as a scratch. Admiral Chen Wei watched the last of the enemy ships die on her tactical display. Her face showed no satisfaction, no joy, only cold determination. Send a message to the Velkari homeworld, she ordered. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that any ship entering our system will meet the same fate. And tell them, she paused, considering her words carefully. Tell them we are coming. Her communications officer hesitated. Admiral, should we wait? Consult with the council? Chen Wei shook her head. We have waited 200 years. We have watched them enslave and murder their way across the galaxy. We have prepared for this moment since the day we first heard their transmissions. She turned to face her crew. The Velkari believe they are the masters of the universe. Today they learned they were wrong. Tomorrow the rest of the galaxy will learn it too. The message was sent. Across the vast distance of space, the Velkari Empire received news of the disaster, and for the first time in 12,000 years, they felt something they had never felt before. Fear. Emperor Zal Theras IX stared at the report in his hands. His 4 eyes read the words again and again, but they did not change. 12 ships destroyed. Admiral Keth Voran dead. The entire expeditionary fleet wiped out in less than 3 minutes. by primitives. "This is impossible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The messenger, a young officer who had drawn the unfortunate task of delivering the news, kept his eyes on the floor. "The sensor records from our long-range observation posts confirm it, Your Majesty. The human ships, they were beyond anything we have ever seen." The Emperor crushed the report in his fist. "Then we will send more ships. 100 ships, 1,000 ships. We will crush these humans like we have crushed every other species that dared to defy us." He gave the order. The Grand Armada, the largest military force in the history of the Velkhari Empire, began to assemble. 10,000 warships from across 800 star systems. It would take time to gather such a force, but when it arrived at Earth, nothing would survive. But the humans did not wait. 3 days after the destruction of the expeditionary fleet, reports began arriving from across the Empire. Human ships had appeared at the Velkhari supply station in the Kroth system. They had destroyed it completely and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Human ships had attacked the slave processing facility on Drath 7s. They had freed the slaves and armed them with weapons. Human ships had struck the Imperial shipyard at Velkos, destroying 30 warships before they could even launch. The attacks were surgical, precise. The humans seemed to know exactly where to strike and when. They appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and disappeared before the Velkhari could respond. And then the strangest reports of all began to arrive. The humans were not just attacking military targets. They were making contact with the enslaved species. They were giving them weapons and supplies. They were teaching them to fight. For the first time in thousands of years, slave revolts broke out across the empire. On world after world, species that had been broken and defeated rose up against their masters. They fought with a fury that shocked the Velkhari. They fought like beings who had finally found hope. Emperor Zal Theris IX called an emergency meeting of his war council. The finest military minds of the empire gathered in the throne room, their faces showing confusion and fear. "How is this happening?" the emperor demanded. "How can these primitives defeat us? How can they be everywhere at once?" High Scholar Velneth stepped forward. She had aged visibly in the weeks since her initial report about Earth. Her research into the humans had revealed things that kept her awake at night. "Your Majesty," she said, "I believe I understand now. We made a terrible mistake. We assumed that because human technology appeared primitive, the humans themselves must be primitive. We were wrong." She activated a holographic display showing the planet Earth. "This world is what we call a Category 12 death world. It is one of the most hostile environments for intelligent life that we have ever recorded. The temperature varies by over 100 degrees between seasons. The planet experiences constant earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and massive storms. The atmosphere is oxygen-rich, which means fires spread easily, and the planet is filled with predators, parasites, and diseases." The War Council listened in growing unease. "Most species would have died on such a world," Velneth continued, "but the humans did not die. They adapted. They survived. And in surviving, they became something unique." She changed the display to show a human body next to a Velkhari body. The contrast was striking. Where the Velkhari were tall and thin, the humans were compact and dense. Where the Velkhari had delicate bones, the humans had thick, heavy skeletons designed to withstand impacts that would shatter Velkhari limbs. "Their bodies are designed for endurance," Velneth explained. "They can maintain physical activity for hours without rest. They heal from injuries that would kill any other known species. Their immune systems are aggressive and adaptive. And their minds," she paused, "their minds are perhaps the most dangerous thing about them." "Explain," the Emperor commanded. "We evolved on a peaceful world, Your Majesty. Our challenges were intellectual. We developed logic and reason. But the humans evolved under constant threat. Their minds developed differently. They are creative in ways that we cannot understand. They can adapt to new situations instantly. They can hold contradictory ideas in their heads and somehow make them work together. They call it intuition. We call it chaos. But it makes them unpredictable. Dangerous." One of the admirals spoke up. "This is all very interesting, scholar, but it does not explain their technology. How did they develop weapons that surpass ours?" Velneth lowered her eyes. Because they have been preparing for us, Admiral, for 200 years. They detected our communications long ago, and they understood what we were. They knew that someday we would come for them. And they spent those 200 years getting ready. She showed another display. They did not just develop weapons, they studied us. They learned our weaknesses. They built ships specifically designed to counter our technology. They trained soldiers specifically to fight our soldiers. While we believed they were primitive, they were preparing for the war they knew was coming. The throne room fell silent. They were never afraid of us, Velness said quietly. They were waiting for us. The Emperor rose from his throne. His hands were shaking with rage. I do not care how they prepared. I do not care what kind of world they come from. The Grand Armada will destroy them. We have 10,000 ships. We have weapons that can crack planets. We will burn their world to ash and salt the ground with their bones. The admirals bowed and hurried to their posts. The Grand Armada would be ready soon. 10,000 ships would descend on Earth and end this threat once and for all. But as they prepared their forces, the reports kept coming. More attacks, more liberated slaves, more uprisings, and something else. Something that worried the military commanders more than anything else. The humans were not fighting alone anymore. The species they had freed were joining them. Ships crewed by former slaves were flying alongside human vessels. Soldiers from a dozen different worlds were training together, learning human tactics, adopting human weapons. A resistance was forming, an alliance of the oppressed. And at its heart were the children of Earth, the survivors of the death world, the species that had turned their hostile planet into a forge that made them strong. The Valkyrie had conquered the galaxy by making everyone afraid. The humans were conquering it by giving everyone hope. The Grand Armada launched with great ceremony. 10,000 warships darkened the sky above Valkyrie Prime as they rose into space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. Emperor Zal Theros IX watched from the balcony of his palace, his four eyes gleaming with anticipation. This would end the human threat. This would crush the slave rebellions. This would restore the Great Order. Supreme Commander Thalvex led the Armada. He was the most experienced military officer in the Empire, a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had crushed rebellions before. He had wiped out entire species. He knew how to win wars. But as the Armada traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, reports continued to arrive, and they were not good. 14 more star systems had fallen to the rebellion. The human-led alliance was growing every day. Former slaves were not just fighting, they were winning. Valkyrie garrisons on a dozen worlds had been overwhelmed by forces that should have been too weak to challenge them. And the humans were doing something else, something that Supreme Commander Thalvex found deeply troubling. They were not killing Valkyrie civilians. On every world they liberated, the humans offered the same terms. Valkyrie soldiers could surrender and be treated fairly. Valkyrie civilians would not be harmed. Only those who had committed crimes against the enslaved species would face punishment. It was a strategy Thalvex did not understand. The Valkyrie had always ruled through fear. They destroyed their enemies completely, leaving no survivors to seek revenge. But the humans were different. They were fighting a war for something other than survival or conquest. They were fighting for justice, and it was working. Valkyrie soldiers were surrendering rather than fighting. Some were even changing sides. The idea of mercy was spreading through the Empire like a disease, weakening the will to resist. The Grand Armada arrived at Earth 2 weeks after its launch. 10,000 ships emerged from hyperspace, forming a wall of steel and fire that stretched across the void. It was a sight that had brought countless species to their knees. But when Supreme Commander Thalvex looked at his sensor readings, his confidence began to fade. The human fleet was waiting for them, not the small force that had destroyed the expeditionary fleet, a massive armada of their own. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species, all flying in perfect formation. And at their center, the largest warship Thalvex had ever seen. It was called the Unity, and it was the flagship of the Terran Alliance. Admiral Chen Wei appeared on the view screen. She looked the same as before, calm, cold, unafraid. Supreme Commander, she said, you have brought quite a force. I am impressed, but I must ask you to consider your situation carefully. Thalbeck straightened in his command chair. We have 10,000 ships. You cannot match our numbers. Numbers are not everything, Commander. We have been fighting your forces for weeks. We have learned your tactics. We have studied your technology. We know your weaknesses. She paused. And we are not alone anymore. As if on cue, more ships began appearing around the human fleet. Ships from the Dreth system, crewed by the survivors of a species the Velkari had tried to exterminate. Ships from the mining colonies of Krath, carrying former slaves who had worked their entire lives in darkness. Ships from a dozen other worlds, all united under a single banner. You see, Chen Wei continued, you made a mistake, Commander. You thought fear would keep the galaxy under control forever. But fear is a weak foundation. The moment someone offers hope, fear crumbles. And we have offered hope. Thalvex gave the order to attack. The battle was massive. It raged for hours across 1,000,000 kilometers of space. The Velkari fought with the desperation of those who knew they were fighting for their survival. They used every weapon, every tactic, every trick they had learned in 12,000 years of warfare. It was not enough. The human ships were faster, stronger, and more resilient than anything the Velkari had faced. Their weapons cut through Velkari shields like they were made of paper. Their pilots flew with a skill and daring that seemed almost reckless. And when Velkari ships managed to damage human vessels, the humans repaired them in minutes and kept fighting. By the end of the first day, the Grand Armada had lost 3,000 ships. By the end of the second day, it had lost 6,000. On the third day, Supreme Commander Thalvex ordered a retreat. Only 2,000 ships made it back to Velkari space. The greatest military force in the history of the Empire had been broken. Emperor Zal Theras IX received the news in silence. His hands trembled as he read the report. 8,000 ships destroyed, millions of Velkari soldiers dead, and the humans were coming. He called his remaining advisors together. They had to find a way to stop this. There had to be something that could defeat the humans. One of the ancient scholars spoke up. There is the Void Cannon, Your Majesty. The throne room fell silent. The Void Cannon was a weapon from the early days of the Empire. It was designed to collapse a star into a black hole, destroying everything in the star system. It had never been used. It was too terrible even for the Velkari. If we destroy their sun, the scholar said, we destroy their homeworld. We destroy their people. We destroy everything they have built. Without the humans to lead them, the alliance will fall apart. The Emperor considered this. It was genocide on a scale that even he had never contemplated. But what choice did he have? The humans would not stop. They would not negotiate. They would keep coming until the Empire was destroyed. Do it, he said. The Void Cannon was prepared in secret. It was hidden on a remote moon, far from any inhabited world. The weapon powered up slowly, gathering energy from the surrounding space. When it fired, a beam of pure darkness would cross the light years to Sul and collapse the yellow star into a point of infinite gravity. Earth would die. Humanity would die. The threat would end. The weapon fired. The beam crossed space at faster-than-light speeds, invisible and unstoppable. It reached the Sol system and struck the yellow star at its heart. And nothing happened. Emperor Zal Theras IX stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The star was still burning. Earth was still there. The humans were still alive. A message arrived from Admiral Chen Wei. Her face appeared on the throne room's main screen, and for the first time she was smiling. We captured your weapons design 3 months ago, she said. Our scientists developed a countermeasure within weeks. Your beam hit our shield and dissipated harmlessly, but I thank you for the schematics. Our version of the weapon is much more efficient. Her smile faded. It is currently aimed at Velkari Prime. If you do not surrender unconditionally within 24 hours, we will use it. The Emperor looked at his advisors. He looked at the tactical displays showing human fleets now surrounding his homeworld. He looked at the reports of rebellions consuming the last remnants of his empire. 12,000 years of rule, 40 enslaved species, 800 star systems. Gone. All of it gone. Because of one small blue world and the stubborn, impossible creatures who lived there. The Emperor had no choice left. He prepared to surrender. The surrender was broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. Emperor Zaltharis IX walked slowly through the great doors of his own throne room. He wore simple gray robes instead of his imperial regalia. His crown had been removed. His symbols of office had been taken away. He was no longer the ruler of 800 star systems. He was just a tired old being who had finally run out of options. The throne room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Former slaves stood alongside their former masters. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years now shared the same space. And at the center of it all, standing before the obsidian throne, was Admiral Chen Wei. She watched the Emperor approach with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the war. No triumph showed on her face, no satisfaction, just quiet determination. The Emperor stopped a few meters away from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Then Zaltharis IX, ruler of the Velkari Empire, slowly lowered himself to his knees. "I surrender," he said. His voice was barely audible. "I surrender myself. I surrender my empire. I surrender everything." Admiral Chen Wei looked down at him. "Do you understand what this means? I will be executed. My family will be executed. My people will be enslaved as we enslaved others." "No." The Emperor looked up, confusion showing on his face for the first time. "That is not what this means," Chen Wei said. "We are not you. We did not fight this war to become the new masters of the galaxy. We did not spend 200 years preparing so that we could do to you what you did to everyone else." She stepped back and gestured to the crowd of representatives behind her. "Every species here has suffered under your empire. Many of them wanted revenge. Many of them wanted to see your homeworld burn, your people enslaved, your civilization erased from history. They had every right to want these things." The Emperor said nothing. He knew she was right. "But that is not the galaxy we want to build," Chen Wei continued. "We want something different, something better. We want a galaxy where every species is free, where no one is a master and no one is a slave, where disputes are settled through negotiation, not conquest, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them." She looked around the throne room at the gathered representatives. "This is not just a human vision. This is a vision we share with every species that has ever suffered under tyranny. And today, we begin to build it together." The Emperor struggled to understand. "But the crimes, the millions who died in our labor camps, the species we exterminated. How can there be justice without punishment?" "There will be punishment," Chen Wei said, "but it will be justice, not revenge. Those who committed specific crimes will be tried and held accountable. Those who ordered atrocities will face consequences. But the Velkari people as a whole will not be punished for the actions of their leaders." She offered her hand to the Emperor, helping him rise to his feet. "Your empire is over, but your species can have a future. You can join the new order as equals, not as conquerors or conquered. You can help build something better than what came before." The Emperor looked at her hand for a long moment. In 12,000 years, no one had ever offered a Velkari ruler mercy. It was a concept that had been foreign to their civilization. He took her hand and stood. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. The Velkari Empire was dismantled piece by piece. Slave camps were closed. Political prisoners were freed. The infrastructure of oppression was torn down and replaced with something new. The Terran Alliance became the foundation of a new galactic government. It was not an empire. There was no single ruler, no supreme authority. Instead, it was a confederation of free species, each governing themselves, but united by shared principles and mutual defense. The humans did not try to lead this new order. They took their place as one species among many, no more and no less important than the others they had helped liberate. When other species asked why they did not claim the power they had clearly earned, the humans gave a simple answer. "We did not fight for power," Admiral Chen Wei explained at the first meeting of the new Galactic Council. "We fought because it was right. We fought because no thinking being should be a slave. We fought because when we looked at the stars, we wanted to find friends and partners, not subjects and servants." She paused, looking around at the representatives of dozens of species. The Velkari believed they were the pinnacle of evolution. They believed they had the right to rule because they were superior. But superiority is not measured by strength or technology or age. It is measured by wisdom, by compassion, by the willingness to lift others up instead of pushing them down. The galaxy listened, and slowly, over years and decades, a new civilization began to take shape. It was not perfect. There were disputes and conflicts. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight. Some species struggled to adapt to freedom after generations of slavery. Some Velkari refused to accept their new status and had to be dealt with. But the foundation was solid, the principles were sound, and at the heart of it all were the humans, the children of the Death World, the species that had turned their harsh planet into a crucible that forged them into something remarkable. On the anniversary of the surrender, a monument was unveiled on Velkari Prime. It stood in the plaza outside the former Imperial Palace, now a museum dedicated to remembering the past and learning from its mistakes. The monument was simple. It showed two hands clasped together. One hand was Velkari, long-fingered and elegant. The other was human, smaller but strong. Between them, they held a single flame. The inscription read, "From oppression, liberation, from hatred, understanding, from many worlds, one family." Admiral Chen Wei attended the ceremony. She was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with age. But her eyes still held the same calm determination that had carried her through the war. A young Velkari approached her after the ceremony. He was barely an adult, born after the fall of the Empire, raised in a galaxy that was finally learning what freedom meant. "Admiral," he said nervously, "I wanted to thank you for what you did, for not destroying us when you had the chance." Chen Wei looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a rare expression on her usually serious face. "We did not come to the stars to destroy," she said. "We came to build. We came to explore. We came to find others like ourselves, thinking beings looking up at the night sky and wondering if they were alone." She placed a hand on the young Velkari's shoulder. "You are not alone. None of us are alone anymore. That is what this is all about." She walked away, leaving the young alien standing before the monument, thinking about a future that would have been impossible just one generation before. Above them, the stars burned bright. Ships from 100 worlds crossed the void, carrying trade and travelers and ideas. The galaxy was changing, growing, becoming something new. The Terran arrival had changed everything, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the change was for the better.